Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Oliver. And as George Luis Borges, an Argentinian poet, essayist, and short story writer, once said, I have always imagined that paradise would be a kind of library. We now knew another strong example of how important books are. Now, TTS have done something likewise, by letting students choose their own paradise and present how wonderful that paradise is on stage. Today, I'm going to present to you a very interesting topic from a book called The Secret of Secrets, written by Dan Brown and was published on September 9, 2025. Now first, let me ask you guys a question. What is considered as consciousness? Is it just about how you feel, how you understand who you are, your intelligence, or your memories? Now for years, the answer may sound simple. In the early 20th centuries, many physicists and philosophers like Francis Crick and Daniel Dennett believed that your brain was the creator of the consciousness. They argued that the way that you remember everything, your five senses, and the way that your brain sends signals to the other parts of your body is what created the consciousness. Now scientists have also mapped the neural pathways, which strongly supported to their theory. And when scientists thought that they had discovered everything they need to know about the human consciousness, a line of physicists and philosophers started to discover a missing piece in that theory. They argued that the brain alone cannot explain everything about the human consciousness. Over time, more and more physicists and philosophers started to discover a missing piece in that theory. Because of that, a theory which could explain almost everything about the human consciousness and was created based on belief was created, and it was called the non-local consciousness. Now how does it work? Rather than being stored inside your brain, the memories and the information you gather from the outside world was transmitted into. Your brain was a receiver that processes those images and informations. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. How can a type of connection like that even exist? Don't worry, you're not the only one who asked that question, because many scientists, when they look at this theory, they also claim that this idea is pseudoscience, because it was created only based on beliefs and has no evidence or explanation that could explain this phenomenon. Now, I want to show you two experiments that will prove to you guys that this idea is not actually pseudoscience at all. The first experiment was conducted by Alain Aspect in 1982. He is a renowned physicist in the Institut Undergraduate School in France. Now, experiment was like this. First, he fired two different kinds of laser at the calcium atom, pushing it to a very high state, which scientists called it the excited state. The atom then had to release its energy by emitting two light particles, or photons, to return to the ground state, or the normal state. Now this is how these two photons become entangled. This entanglement here, it was a property called polarization. Once created, these two photons were bounded by a rule. When the first photons polarized vertically, automatically, the next photons would polarize horizontally. Now, Alain guided these two photons through a tube which was measured at 2 meters length. Now, when the scientists who argue against this theory, when they first look at this experiment, they would say that, what if the photons somehow can communicate together? To stop this argument, Alain put a device at the near end of the tube which automatically change the polarization of the photon in just 10 nanoseconds, making it physically impossible for the photons to communicate. Yet the photons still behave in the same way. Therefore, Alain concluded that the two photons did have a connection together. Now, this connection is not normal. In quantum physics, we call this quantum entanglement. This spooky action at a distance was proven to be real by many scientists, not just Alain Aspect. And even though they cannot explain how and why does it exist, but they can prove that this theory is true. Now, let's come back to the non-local consciousness idea. If scientists they can prove that two particles get a connection together, then why does the idea of a brain can connect with the consciousness labeled as pseudoscience? Now I know this might be hard to believe. Then I'm going to go you the second example. This experiment was conducted by Carl Lashley in the early 1900s. It involved a training rat to solve a maze. He hypothesized that if he removes different parts from the cerebral cortex, the rat will not be able to remember the way to the end of the maze. Yet no matter how hard he tried, the rats often still remembered the way to the end of the maze. Therefore, Carl Lashley concluded that the memory, with the part that stored the memory, which he called an engram, was not stored anywhere inside of the brain. Now, from that experiment, we know that the brain doesn't function like a simple storage device. The memory is far more complex than scientists originally expected. Now, don't close the door too soon. Don't conclude that the memory exists solely inside our brain just because we found the neurons that fire or chemicals that react. It's far more than just that. We must know that the moment that we know everything is the exact moment that we're ready to discover everything. Thank you.